Here we go!
For many years, people have often questioned, does violence in video games actually have an effect in the real world? Do video games actually psychologically make people sometimes think that it is okay to commit these crimes and violent acts in real life, and that is what makes them actually do these things? Well, before we talk about that, let's examine some of the violent video games in question. Most violent video games, not all but most, actually do have moral good reasons for the violence, by protecting others from bad guys, rescuing someone in peril, or wars where the side you're on is the correct side. There are games like GTA, when the objective is to plainly kill and steal. I would talk about that, but that would mean I would need to go much more in depth, and that would need to be a video all on its own. But in this video, we're going to look at 3 different categories of violent video games. A realistic violence, the kind of in the middle, and then cartoon violence. The first game we'll look at is Battlefield 4, a realistic war game, where tensions between the United States and Russia are very high at the moment. Your mission is to play as a soldier named Wrecker on the United States side, which automatically gives the player the sense of, okay, I'm on the side of the good guys. I'm fighting for the United States of America, so obviously this is all going to be good and right. In this situation, that hunch actually is true. The antagonist of the game is a Chinese man named Chang who plans to overthrow the Chinese government, get support of the Russians, and come to the brink of war with the United States. The Chinese presidential candidate had apparently been assassinated, and the antagonist pointed falsely towards the United States as the country responsible. Apparently, though, the candidate was not killed and showed themselves to the Chinese forces, creating an alliance among the United States, China, and Russia. Upon hearing the news which had brought his plans to an end, Chang, the main antagonist, desperately plans an attack to bury the evidence of what had just happened. He did not want any type of treaty or alliance among these 3 countries. He wanted to be the ruler of China. Unfortunately, a suicide mission is necessary, which does destroy Chang and his ship, ending the threat of, quote-unquote, the bad guy in the game. The player, who with a heavy heart had to order the mission, as well as the person that went on the mission, are seen as heroes. The violence in the game was for the greater good, and the good guys came out on top, even though violence did have to come into play. As a whole, though, violence was not meant just to be violent. There was a reason for the violence, thus going out and killing somebody randomly in the real world because of this game would make no sense. Now for the in-the-middle violent game, let's look at Transformers Fall of Cybertron, a less realistic war game of alien robots that turn into cars. This game starts off towards the end of a war between the good guy Autobots and the bad guy Decepticons, led by a crazy tyrannical maniac bent on power and destruction. The bad guys have practically won the war, and their home planet of Cybertron is essentially dead. The Autobots' only goal is to escape the bad guys and find another place to live. That is their only reason for continuing to fight. They just want to escape.
This is needless. All we want is to leave.
The whole point of the game is to gather what is necessary to depart from the planet, although in the meantime the player will need to do a lot of killing. Now in this game you also get to play as the bad guys, the Decepticons, but this is to mainly keep the mindset that the Autobots are losing. If the player continued to win battles as an Autobot, the fact that they are losing would make no sense. So the player does actually have to play as a bad guy to get the real sense of the situation. In the end, the battle, war, and journey from the planet leaves on a cliffhanger, but you still have the sense that as the Autobot you are playing as, you are doing the right thing. You are trying to defeat the evildoers. Now for the next category, cartoonized violence. Games like Mario, Sonic, Pac-Man, Crash Bandicoot, and Croc, as well as countless others that are in this type of genre. For now we'll focus on Mario and Sonic. So you're probably thinking, Mario, Sonic, violent? That just can't be. Well, it's actually very true. These type of games are the video games that anti-game violence people seem to bypass, not even realizing the true nature behind their innocent, cartoony appearance. Mario and Sonic are actually killers. Mario has killed millions of Goombas, Koopas, and Piranha Plants on his quest to save Princess Peach and the Toads. and the same goes for Sonic and his foes. But once again, just like many other good guys, they do it for the greater good. They do it to defeat the evildoers, the bad guys out to do harm to the good and the innocent. Now on to the claims of violence related to the person playing a violent video game. I believe the most simple, practical way to reduce these claims is to require an okay from a doctor in order to buy violent games. Because realistically, it would seem very odd if a simple virtual game would turn a very nice person into a crazed killer. It just doesn't seem logical. There is a huge line between a game and real life. In real life, there are consequences and feelings of regret and sadness, unlike a video game when there's just a bunch of pixels on the screen. The situation would most likely be that any person that has turned violent due to video games on a TV screen was mentally unstable to begin with. They should not be playing these video games at all, period. There are people that can perfectly handle these video games and realize that it is not real. It is just a virtual world, a virtual reality. But then there are those people where that line does not seem that apparent. Now granted, I'm not talking about requiring doctor's notes for games like Mario and Sonic and Pac-Man, because that would be a bit extreme. But at least for M-rated games and some more violent T-rated games, this probably should be a necessity. Some states in the U.S. are actually already taking an action similar as this. In Missouri, convicted violent offenders are unable to buy violent video games. Of course, the most widely used rule is that children under the age of 18 cannot buy violent video games rated M, even if they have parental consent. The only way they are able to get these video games is if the parent actually buys it themselves. The child has no possible way to buy that video game. And that right there shows that the violence in these video games are meant to be taken seriously. Young children should not be playing M-rated games. They are rated M for a reason. And if there is some type of act where a child goes out and reenacts something that happens in an M-rated game, well, then they shouldn't have been playing that game to begin with, because since they are a child, they do not seem to grasp the fact that, once again, it is a video game, and those things are not allowed to be done in real life. Now, it's a given that gamers will feel that getting a doctor's okay to buy a video game might be a pain, but honestly, most would probably agree that it would be a better alternative than continuing to hear that video games are to blame for multiple violent real acts.